JD Vance should completely ignore Tim Walz largely. He should say, continually make it about Kamala Harris and make it about the agenda. Tim Walz is a buffoon, and people know that, and they'll see that. But Kamala Harris is far less popular than Tim Walz. And this debate is not going to be about bringing down Tim Walz's favorables. People are voting for the president right now. That's the way it is.
Anyone who was going to vote against like Kamala because they're mad about Walz's like guard service probably already knows about it.
Correct. So at this point, we tried to set that in. The media didn't take it. This is about Trump and Harris. That's all people are thinking about. So then, in my opinion, J.D. Vance should do the following. He should keep on saying, well, Governor Walz, your boss. Refer to Kamala Harris as his boss. And saying, well, your boss wants to ban fracking. Keep on attacking so that Tim Walz has to defend Kamala Harris the entire time and not have to, defend whatever weird record. Now, you could pepper in, tampons and boys' bathrooms and blah, 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 blah. But framing her as his boss is very emasculating, will help with men voters because Tim Walz will not know what to do with that, and basically make all the points that we wished would have been said in the first debate right in and there. Why isn't your boss fixed it yet? What is your boss doing right now, Tim Walz? Why doesn't she go tell the IRS she won't go after tax on tips right now? Why are you guys not settling the peace deal, or doing a peace deal between Russia and Ukraine? What is your boss doing right now to bring down inflation? One after the other. Make him have to carry the water for her. That's my thoughts.
I love that.
I think that's very strong.
That's
Strong.
the advice I gave JD.
It's good advice. It's good advice, and I hope he takes it. It is.
Do you guys like the framing your boss?
I love it.
I like
That's what
it.
I love the most.
What
Good
I
boss.
worry is I could imagine him turning that around in a good way, where maybe he appropriates it, where he's like, my boss is a hero who fought the cartels. And he turns it into this litany of how great she is.
The reason I like it though is that no one really likes a girl boss right now, as far as in swing voters, like hyper. Do you guys know what I'm saying? So kind of, because you could say your running mate, okay? You could say Vice President Harris, but your boss, it makes him look like this little thing that is controlled
Little
by
toady.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
why is that important? The only attempt that they want out of this VP debate, what are their marching orders? What does success look like for the Kamala campaign? Because the polling data is not going great for them right now. It's not going great for us, but it's not where they want it to be. It is completely in the margin. They're telling Tim Walz, for the love of God, can we not lose men as badly as we are? Right? Talk about how you do camo and, you tried nicotine gum once or whatever. Nothing will turn off men more than the idea that Tim Walz can't stand up to Kamala Harris.
They also will they'll try to bring back the weird thing, I think. I don't know if they'll explicitly say weird, but they'll want to, when I'd say like Vance's worst moments of the campaign have been like, if there's anything like a little bit awkward, and some of that was just inevitable, like, okay, cat lady thing, it's a 3-4-year-old interview and you can't undo any of that. But it was like, he had that one where he was at the grocery store or something and the woman didn't want to be on camera and it kind of looked like the end of a sitcom episode or something.
That was not a great moment.
It wasn't great. But they'll want to try to get a moment like that where he maybe like fumbles over it. And then of course they also want to say, Vance, you're really extreme. You're the Project 2025 candidate. That's why you're on the Trump campaign. They'll try to do that. They're going to try to say Trump is really radical and the fact that this guy is on stage.
They're going to try to make him seem creepy.
That too.
That's the word. Do you agree? I don't. JD's
I wonder if
your
they'll
friend,
say
but
that. He was like, the American people don't want a creep for vice president, something like that.
I could see that.
Well,
and I think that.
Yeah, go ahead, Charlie. Sorry.
No, I don't have anything strong to say. Go ahead.
No. But if you look back at what the presidential debate kind of maybe shows us about the team around them that is doing debate prep, they go straight for the jugular. She was making ad hominem attacks. She was attacking his character as an egocentric person, all this stuff, attacking like rally sizes. None of that stuff's gonna work on JD, but he will launch those attacks. And I think JD's gonna like hit his, yes, it's true. Net favorability, Tim Walz is going to be higher than JD simply because of the media environment that we exist in. But, that's what's interesting, Charlie. You see this in like the CNN clips as well, that, Trump has a lower favorability than Kamala Harris, but guess what? 51% of the respondents also said that Trump's presidency was a success, and only 37% said that Biden-Harris administration has been a success. So you can have low favorabilities while people still agree with the policy and will still vote for you. And also, I think JD's natural likability on camera is going to absolutely put sunlight on the media's astroturfing of JD as soon as he got into the race with the cat lady stuff. So I think he's naturally really likable. He's affable. He's got like a lightness to his personality. And I do not think you can bait JD Vance at all. So those attacks, those personal attacks, are not going to work.
So I agree. And the case needs to be about prosecuting it against Tim Walz and make it about Kamala, meaning just Tim Walz is nothing more than a bag carrier for Kamala Harris. Emasculate him, minimize him. As Jack aptly put it, don't let him do this like coach locker room Midwest thing. You know, we're going to pump up the country. It's a bunch of nonsense. Make them, and this is an interesting thing. I think we might get into more detail in this VP debate. Make him have to answer for the border, for immigration, for crime, for the economy. And the other piece of advice I gave JD is embrace the bandwagon effect. Say, you know, a majority of Americans think our ticket's better for the economy. A vast majority of Americans think that we're better on immigration. And all of a sudden, it's very hard for Tim Walz, because all of a sudden he has to like attack the
like
people.
he has to say like the polls are not true or something.
And say,
I like that framing.
And just say, look, we are on...
And he'll be better at saying that than Trump would. Trump would just say, everyone agrees we're better on the border.
100%. So JD could say very humbly, look, the American people have seen both agendas, and we're double-digit favorites, or preferred on management of the economy, double-digit on managing of foreign affairs, and double-digit on immigration. And Governor Walz, your ticket is deeply unpopular because the American, like something like that, I think is a great way of basically the bandwagon effect. Then is no one will be like, well, maybe that's right. Yeah, I do think he's, you know what I'm saying? Like all of a sudden the people want to be in the majority of Americans.
How would you have JD phrase the answer on abortion?
I think we should play offense on it. And I think you got to go to late term. I think that he could definitely navigate with precision Tim Walz's late term abortion extremism better than President Trump could. I think JD Vance needs to know the states by name that allow late term abortion and list them off. Again, I messed all this. New Mexico, Colorado, Washington, Oregon, Minnesota, New Jersey, Vermont, and a couple others with no restrictions. And then I think that he should say, but the people who need to answer the question is they want to get rid of the filibuster to do this. Governor Walz, can you tell us, will you get rid of the filibuster for anything else? Will you get rid of the filibuster to add D.C. and Puerto Rico in the states?
That's great. I wouldn't do the statehood one because that's like we get that, but I think normies wouldn't say D.C. as state is bad.
But that's an escape hatch away
I would
from
say
abortion.
Amnesty. I would say, would you get rid of the filibuster to do amnesty?
So Governor Walz, answer the question to the American people. Can you commit to saying, or what? I'm not going to say commit because that's too much of an escape hatch. Will you use the will you get rid of the filibuster to give amnesty to illegal aliens? And then just like let him answer.
Yeah,
Charlie.
The
other angle on the abortion thing, though, and you had this in that original viral tweet, was that he has the most radical abortion laws in the country.
Correct.
And one of the most horrifying, disgusting practices in our country. I genuinely believe it's a scourge on our country. It's a spiritual darkness. And I think for JD to sort of use Trump's attack vector and say, this is radical. We're not the radical ones. We're saying let the states decide. There's a lot of radical policies in Minnesota. And it's one of these states too, Charlie, and you know this very well because you kind of know that part of the world. They call it Minnesota nice. And it's guys like Tim Walz that are railroading these policies through on generally good people that are just kind of a little too passive for their own good. And the rest of the country is not like that, though. They're gonna see and hear these policies. I think it's genuinely radical and will strike the average American as too extreme.
I know the type, and it's too bad that Midwestern nice has turned inverted to allow ourselves to be looted
One-
and taken
Well,
advantage of.
Minnesota Nice always included a very strong passive-aggressive element to it.
Totally passive aggressive. That's why NPR is so popular. Mm-hmm. NPR is the most passive aggressive
to-
medium ever.
Big time.
Minnesota.
Something I want to throw out, just I know that Tim Walz is going to do this because we've seen guys like that do this again and again, and it was a huge part of the DNC, and that's the power of story. So he's going to come with a couple of these abortion stories in his back pocket. He's going to have stories like that. I would love to hear JD Vance, maybe not go up on stories like that, but we know, for example, that Tim Walz is most definitely going to bring up Springfield, Ohio. He's going to try to use this as an attack line on JD. You know, have a few of those stories in the back pocket with names of individuals. You know, this person that I spoke to on the phone, and she told me this happened to her daughter, or this man told me that this happened to his job. And not just, you can't just say like, a constituent called my office and said this, right? Which a normal politician would say. But what JD, I think, and I hope will do is actually have, the name. Well, just the first name is fine. You don't have to dox people, whatever. But, something about the description. This age called me up. We had this great conversation. Those are the type of stories that actually leave a lasting impact on people. Because when you're hearing a story psychologically, so it's like when Charlie does these tabling events, and I, sort of got to, appear at the one, you're coming to it on both sides. People have their defenses up. They have their facts and figures. They're ready to go. But when you're hearing a story, you enter in a completely different psychological model of your mind where you're in receive mode. You just want to hear someone's story. And when we hear stories, we relate to them and we try to interact with them in a way psychologically where we're putting ourselves, if we can, as much as we can, in the shoes of the person who did it. That's why documentaries can be so powerful, et cetera, et cetera. It's why Hollywood is so powerful. So use that power, JD. Use the power of story. Use the power of the story of your own background in Middletown, Ohio, and how you grew up and what's happened there. Using that power of a story is always going to be JD's best weapon.
I think that's smart. Let's talk about Rumble Premium. I'm actually a Rumble Premium member, so listen carefully. This sponsorship is from Rumble, one that is incredibly important to the survival of the company. When Rumble first started in 2013, they built the platform for the small creator. They didn't have censor or biases. They were fair and treated all creators equally. No one thought platforms would censor political conversation or censor opinions on COVID, but they did. Facebook has admitted they fell to pressure from the Biden-Harris regime, and Rumble did not. Instead, they held the line. They are attacked in corporate media. They're attacked in governments like France, and they're attacked from brand advertisers who refuse to work with them. Corporate America is fighting to remove speech, and Rumble is fighting to keep it. Go to rumble.com/premium/Kirk10. That's again, rumble.com/premium/Kirk10. Rumble won't survive with brand advertisers, and they don't get much of it watching our show on Rumble, is the most we can ask from you. But if you really believe in this fight and you have the means, one major way you can help Rumble survive is by joining Rumble Premium. Join the community that believes in the First Amendment and believes in our human right to speech. Go to rumble.com/premium/Kirk10. Like I said, if you have the means and believe in this cause, now's the time to join Rumble Premium. If you don't have the means, we're happy. Just watch us on Rumble. Rumble's amazing. Can we brag on Rumble for a sec, guys, how important it is? I think that Rumble is one of the main reasons we have a competitive ecosystem going into this November.
I completely agree with that, Charlie. I think everybody has to go back to the dark days of like 2020, 2021, where COVID was, all the disinformation. You're killing people if you tell people not to take the jab. And this has all been exposed through the Twitter files, through even Mark Zuckerberg's talked about this stuff, all the insane amount of pressure. And out of that, from the federal government on these social media platforms, and out of that came Rumble, and it just burst onto the scene and grew like wildfire. And that's what, thanks to Rumble, we have this show, we have this audience. But man, they were a light in a sea of darkness at a time where the censorship was, I would think, apex censorship regime. And hat tip to Rumble. And by the way, if you're watching this on Charlie's channel, like, hit that little red button, support Locals, which is owned by Rumble, which is a big deal too.
Absolutely. And I want to remind you guys, we'll be live for Thought Crime Reaction for the J.D. Vance, Tim Walz debate. That is coming up on Tuesday evening, so make plans there.
Unless we get a surprise third debate, second presidential debate, second debate between Trump and Kamala, third overall for president. This is looking like it's going to be the last debate of the cycle. It's going to be this, and then a month, and we vote. And that gives it much higher stakes. Usually, we have, the standard was 3 presidential, 1 vice presidential. It was just sort of slotted in there. The diehards watch it. And it's quickly forgotten. I can't really remember the most famous moment from any of the last few Veep debates, but this is kind of the last pitch that they can make to like a big audience where everyone's watching. And I think there's also been a lot of attention on the vice presidential nominees relative to some prior years. Like, I don't think Pence got that much attention in 2016. Kamala wasn't getting as much attention as Biden himself in 2020. But this time, both sides have really hit the opposing faction, and there's a big difference in style between them. You have Vance has the, came from a town much like Springfield, Ohio, goes to Yale, has kind of this class traitor element to him because, he was allowed into the elite, but now he's turned and become critical of elites. And then Walz, we have, the whole conservatism in drag sort of thing that he presents, where he's this folksy guy from the Midwest who just wants to do what's right, gosh darn it. And we're not gonna support all those, rich coastal elite Ivy Leaguer folk. And so there's a big contrast between them. And I guess I do wonder, how does Vance come out of that clash successfully? Because on the one hand, Walz is a more experienced politician. He has more practiced at that folksy appeal. On the other hand, Vance has definitely been the one who's done the most media in the last 2 months, going against reporters, doing tons of interviews. So he's certainly like the most practiced of any of the politicians right now, and I'd hope that pays some dividends.
What are your thoughts, guys? It seems as if this is going to be a continuation of the Trump-Kamala debate. Also, this is the last debate that we're going to have between these two camps. Jack, you first.
Yeah, so, there's a lot here. Now, one thing that I think strategy-wise that I would say for J.D. Vance, he's introduced himself to the country a number of times, because obviously his book came out that just took off, when it was first released in 2016, 2017, sold millions of copies. It continues to sell millions of copies, by the way. Then the movie came out on Netflix in 2020 that obviously did very well. I'm not going to say obviously because Netflix doesn't always release their numbers, and they certainly have kept this under wraps. But I've had people tell me that it's been one of the best performing videos on all of Netflix for one of their independently produced productions. And again, you've got Glenn Close, you've got Amy Adams playing his mother. But one of the issues that J.D. Vance has, even with the enormous success of Hillbilly Elegy, is that people don't always necessarily associate him with the movie, because the movie so solely focuses, not solely, but so centrally focuses on the mother and grandmother that people don't realize, oh, wait, that's J.D. Vance's family. So if there's anything he needs to do in terms of introducing himself, is just remind people that, and he's been doing this on the stump over and over, by the way, remind people that is me, that is my family, that family that you remember from that movie, that is us, and that was a story that I put out. That's number one. Number two, politically, so that's on the personality side. Politically speaking, which I think will cover up a lot of the stuff that we're talking about in terms of Tim Walz being able to try to come across as folksy. And he does, by the way. He comes across like, a high school football coach, and even though he was never a lead coach. And then when it comes to the actual politics of it, I think, and you've seen him do this in media again and again, you've seen him do this in these, I love these sort of like mini It's like a mini town hall / rally / press conference that JD Vance has done, these hybrid events, which are fantastic, where he's taking interview questions from media, but he's also talking to just like regular people. And he's got a crowd there of supporters. So whenever he's, jousting with the mainstream media, they come back on him and, people are laughing and taking his side. And it works really, really well. And the clips do well because it looks like a fun atmosphere. He keeps it positive, but he always focuses on Kamala Harris. He doesn't talk about Tim Walz. He doesn't get into the personal stuff about Tim Walz. He can if he has to. I'm sure, by the way, that Tim Walz is going to be doing the same thing. He's going to make it about Donald Trump. And so you've got to make sure to maintain that focus on Kamala Harris, that she's the candidate. She's also the incumbent, by the way. And we've seen this huge push from Kamala's camp right now to try to paint Trump in a way as the incumbent, seeing as he's the former president, whereas to say that she's not part of the Biden administration. Well, she is, as a matter of fact, and she's the only, as far as we know, the only cogent non-senile member of the Biden administration, as far as we know, the senior ranking one. Fair enough, even though we've got Joe Biden running cabinet meetings. So, you've got to keep it on her. But one of the main things that he can do to really bait Tim Walz is that Tim Walz has a tendency, even though he is a more polished politician, he has a big tendency to get hot under the collar. And we've seen this again and again in these local videos from Minnesota. Go back to some of the videos during COVID. Whenever he's challenged on something that he's done or challenged on something that he said, he gets very, very upset about this. And so I think there's opportunities for JD Vance to bait Tim Walz the way that Kamala kept trying to bait Donald Trump in the first debate.